Hello and welcome to the Empowered Couples Podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay in the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is about 4 steps to forgiveness to move forward without the past holding you back.
Yeah, you don't want that weight, that baggage to be dragging you when you're trying to move into a positive future.
And we do have a parenting moment for those of you that are parents listening. So normally we have help today on Mondays to record our podcast. Someone watches Sky so we can do that, and we didn't have the help today. So we're like, this is going to be such a great episode. We have to do it. But when are we going to do it? We had a full day of moving and packing. We started a challenge, so we've been having people start this great challenge we're doing in 3 weeks. You know, we played with Sky, and we're like, well, we'll do it at the end of the day. So here we are. We just put Sky to sleep, and this is such an important topic, especially to kick off the year, that we're doing this literally at night.
Yes, that's our commitment to you guys. We want to keep our promise. And Aaron mentioned a little word in there. He said this challenge that we're hosting. So we are hosting for the first time in a year. It's been a long time. Sky was actually a little infant when we did this last time. And it is our 5-day couples challenge where we focus on the 5 C's: communication, conflict, connection, collaboration, and overcoming challenges. You want to go to mycoupleschallenge.com and get signed up for this. It starts January 23rd, but we are seeing registrations fly in, and you just have to be a part of it. I mean, read the feedback from previous challenges. And I want to say this, it's not complicated things that you're going to be focusing on. We get it. You're busy. You have a lot going on. It is going to be something that relates to both you and your partner with just a few minutes a day. So go to mycoupleschallenge.com.
It's going to be live video trainings with us 5 days in a row. You're not going to want to miss this. The last one we did was amazing. So yes, we want to see you in there. And it really brings us to this topic even about forgiveness, because with everything going on for the new year, and welcome to 2023, everyone, there's this sense of renew this year, do things differently, set a plan, set a goal, new achievements. And that is great. But you know, listeners, that what makes that happen is really when you are able to let go of the things from the previous year so that you don't bring them into the next year. And that's a part of why some activities and plans don't get implemented, is because you're not releasing the things from the past or acknowledging the challenges and the failures and like being able to, again, put that back in 2022. And yet that's a similar dynamic that happens in relationships all the time. You're trying to move forward, and yet you need real forgiveness to be able to clear the path, clear the road so you can pave a new way. And we think this is just such a time to talk about forgiveness, whether it is something for yourself from 2022 or it is something with your partner now, or obviously in the future, so you can clear this path and you can actually create something and not have it go the same as it always has gone.
Forgiveness is, I think, one of the hardest things to provide people. I think as human beings, we want to be forgiving. We want to offer grace to people, but it's challenging. I mean, we talk to couples all day, every day, but we even hear about other relationships that they have a broken relationship with their mother-in-law, with a child, with a friend. And so we can almost cut off people more than do the work to move to forgiveness, because it can seem easier, but yet your heart aches. It's like you can miss that person, or you could just tolerate with your partner, for example, just being slightly disconnected or being really disconnected. You could just live that way instead of do the hard work. Well, hard is not always the case. I mean, it's not easy.
We're going to give you the 4 steps. We're going to break it down. And you're right. It's not easy per se, but I think there's a certain idea out there that we're supposed to forgive. You know, we're supposed to be like Jesus in the Bible. And to be honest, he was a pretty amazing example, because I'll go into this more later, but he didn't take offense to things. And it's like, yeah, we could be people that could live that way. And I don't think a lot of us are. So the idea is, we're supposed to forgive, but it's like we're supposed to move on or just get over it. But that doesn't work because when you don't actually have the forgiveness, it's going to come up in another way.
Oh, yeah. That's
It's going to show up in another form.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to come up as, why are you getting angry about that when we're over here talking about this?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense. Why are you angry all of a sudden? It's because you're not fully granting forgiveness from the past. Or, and I've thought about this a lot, the other thing is you just move on and you do create an emotional wedge of disconnection between you and your partner.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I've really thought about this a lot. You can say to yourself, yeah, I really need to forgive. I need to let this go. So I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to move past it. And then you start to pull back from your partner a little bit. You are not as engaging. Your focus and attention's pulled back.
Kind of protecting your heart a little, I'd say, too.
You are, yeah. And I think for men also, we just have this, let me go over here and I'll just kind of do a little bit on my own. But you create this disconnect between you and your partner. So these are not great ways to operate and label it as forgiveness.
That's so true. Absolutely. And before we go into the 4 steps to forgiveness, there are a couple instances we would say you can forgive a little bit easier, right? Where it's not going to take maybe as much attention to the 4 steps we're going to go into. And the first one would be when it's a moment where there was a genuine, what we call blip moment. Right? A blip, like it's like just a quick little error. You know, let's say they come home from work and they're exhausted. So maybe they use the wrong tone or, you know, maybe they say something that's not so nice, but then they acknowledge it. And you can be like, okay, like you and I have those moments where we'll be like, hey, can we let this be a blip moment? Sorry, like I was not my best.
We use that phrase, by the way, and feel free to steal that.
Yeah, but we don't use that as an excuse. Like we acknowledge it quickly. Like if there's just like a little like offness or we just didn't speak to each other right, it was just a human error. That's what we would say. It's a blip moment. And that's when we go, okay, I'm going to forgive you. Let's move on.
And it's usually something that just happens very infrequently. Because if something is recurring, that's probably not just a blip.
That's a pattern.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's a pattern. And I also want to mention that a part of this is really predicated on your level of your love account. So I think, and obviously both of us think, that your ability to grant forgiveness also has something to do with the level of your love account. When it's high, it's similar to what you're saying. You're able to see things as blips, especially when they're not patterns. And you can really recognize that your partner is someone that has really filled your love account. It's someone that is making deposits to connect with you, to show love and support. And then so when these things happen, it really does feel like it rolls off your back. So it is easier to grant forgiveness when that happens, which as we go into the 4 steps, it's a lot kind of more difficult and you're going to need these 4 steps when the love account is specifically lower.
Yes, that's so true. Great point.
And one thing I want to cover before we really get into the steps, I thought about Jesus on this too, and I just mentioned him a few minutes ago. One thing is, ideally, you could get to the place that you just don't take offense to things. And I think that was the example that Jesus was showing for us. And you could also, like him, see people for the greatness that they are. And you could choose to see your partner for the greatness. You could choose that when the expression is coming towards you from your partner, you could recognize that that's coming from a pain that they have going on and not about you. And I think that's why Jesus was able to just grant forgiveness in the most extreme circumstances. And I want to put that out there, like, yeah, we want to move to be like that, but I don't think a lot of us are yet
Quite
there.
there.
You know, the tone of voice, the things that are said, things brought up from the past, we do take offense to these things. We do take things personally, especially when the love account is low. And so I think we're in a place where we still need steps like these to be able to forgive.
And of course, there are different degrees of offenses, right? So when we're talking about these steps, besides the blip moments and, you know, just the little mistakes that happen, It could be an argument that gets really intense and harsh things are said. It's not your average argument, right? It was really hurtful. That's one offense that could really take something. Of course, breaches of trust, like physical or emotional infidelity or inappropriate acts outside of the marriage bounds, whatever that is, looking at people on social media. There's many different things that can feel outside of the boundaries that you want for your relationship. Or here's another one, not following through on things that have been discussed often. So you've brought it up. Maybe it's about how you handle things with the children and you talk about it and you come up with agreements and then it doesn't get followed, or you discuss needs and the person keeps saying, okay, I'll work on that, and they aren't following through. That can feel like forgiveness is needed. But check in with yourself right as we're about to go into these 4 steps. Think about an area within your partnership that forgiveness is needed. And really identify it. Can you even kind of notice the way maybe your heart is more closed to them? Can you notice where you've been a little bit more on guard? You haven't been as joyful. Or when an argument comes up, you bring that up again. Or you think about it. So get present to it as we go into these 4 steps and really check out which parts are missing for you most.
And we hope that we painted the picture well enough that sometimes there's blips, and so sometimes you don't need these 4 steps. And then depending on the severity of the offense, you might not need these first 2. So let's go into the first 2, though, which is probably going to be more applicable to when there is a larger severity of an offense. And why don't you go first? I've just called it step 1, choose. And then I also added commitment. But why don't you talk about how this is first a choice?
Yes. Well, if you are going to forgive someone, you actually have to choose it. You can't feel forced into it. You can't feel obligated into it. You can't say you're going to forgive, but you're actually not doing the work. It truly is a choice to do this and to say, I want to forgive this person. I'm willing to do the hard work and set aside maybe my ego's tendency to want to push them away and to be right about this. So we have to really check in with our heart as like, am I actually committed? Am I choosing this forgiveness? Do I want to let go of this? Not let go as in like, oh, that's all it takes. But do I want to grant this forgiveness for them and for me? Because there's so many famous quotes about forgiveness, but the one that always sticks out is it's like a poison for you when you're not forgiving, right? When you're holding on to any resentment or anger towards someone, it is poison for you. And of course, it's not great for the other person as well. So that choice is important, that commitment to doing the work.
And I like that you added the commitment piece in there, because my thought on the commitment adds in the element of higher severity of offense and lower love account. You're typically going to want to act from how you feel. You're not going to feel like you want to grant forgiveness.
So true.
That they should go first. This was too big of an offense, whatever that might be. And so a part of this first step to me is you have to act from the commitment to forgive, or as you said, the choice. But you have to act from what you're committed to for the relationship, not how you feel. Because there's many times you're not going to feel like you want to forgive.
No, I want to cut them out.
But who cares at this point? What are you actually committed to?
Absolutely.
So let's step into the second step, which is what I've labeled honesty. And again, the first 2 steps are ones that when your love account is lower or when the severity of the offense is a little bit higher. Now, for a person to feel at this point that they can grant the forgiveness, what they might need is this level of honesty from the, call it, offender. And the honesty is going to be in certain clarity of details. Okay, there's going to be some things that need to be brought to the table.
I need the details. I need the who, what, when, where, why. I need to know how long, right? All of the details.
Some unanswered questions that the offended might just need to have answered. And sometimes a part of this is an understanding, and not necessarily just for the offended, but an understanding that the offender gets why they were driven to take that action. I've reflected on this a lot too. I think that becomes a key element for some people to be able to forgive, does my partner really get why they were driven to do that? And that's going to come up in our fourth step.
And while you're talking, I'm sure people could easily see how that applies to big things like infidelity, right? Because you can hear why, the details, like who and when and why and how long, but that also applies to things outside of that. For example, another big topic with couples that we work with is a parenting challenge, right? Like maybe one person doesn't handle their anger well and they maybe take it out on the child, and the partner can just keep saying over and over again, okay, I'm going to work on it. I'm going to work on it, or whatever, excuses. But the person on the other side is saying, well, do you understand exactly why you get there? I need to know that you know, right? I need you to know what your triggers are and when you're about to go there, and that degree of honesty. So of course, it applies to infidelity or other breaches of the boundaries, but even think about other topics where just honesty and transparency and being able to acknowledge what is driving that behavior, like you said, Aaron.
Mm-hmm. So those are the first two steps. Again, low love accounts, level of severity. So this is linear still on that process, but for those that are in higher love accounts, and this could be maybe a smaller offense, you're going to jump in here with us at step 3, technically, which is responsibility. So this needs to happen no matter what. It needs to be an acknowledgement and responsibility taken of the impact that the action had.
Can you elaborate a little more on acknowledgement?
Yes. It's not just saying I'm sorry, obviously. It really goes into our 5 R's to repair at this point, right? So watch the WebClass if you haven't seen that. Get the book so you can see the steps for the 5 R's. But it really is key to understand that your intent doesn't really matter at this point. It's about impact. Some action was taken and your intent could be the best. Maybe you weren't really thinking through it that much. But whatever it is, it impacted your partner in a certain way. And this trips up a lot of people, trips up a lot of couples, because you start to defend, you start to validate why you shouldn't be upset about that. That's not how the details went down. I don't know why you're saying that. So this whole thing of invalidation is just going to keep you stuck. So you have to acknowledge that when you took X action, that it had Y impact on your partner. And it really doesn't matter at this point what it is they say. It doesn't matter if it makes sense to you. You just have to get, okay, I didn't even realize that I was doing that, but when this happened, it had you feel this way. And you acknowledge that in some level of empathy, sometimes a level of remorse, but certainly an authentic feeling of, I do get how that impacted you, and then I am sorry for that. And I'm also taking responsibility that my action had that impact on you.
This step is not easy at all.
Well,
it really takes humility and setting aside any kind of sense of like shame. I think that's what can come up for people sometime. And we can kind of protect ourselves from feeling guilt or shame by deflecting and making it about, no, this isn't about me. This is about you. When really deep down there is that guilt. And so it does take, setting aside any wrongness, any just ick feeling about it. This isn't about making yourself feel like a horrible person, right? You're not trying to like just put yourself down. It's like just acknowledging like, wow, like that was not okay and I'm not okay with it. And that's where you have to check in on your own integrity. Like, I mean, really, was it something you aren't okay with as well? So not an easy step. And with that, Aaron, do you want to take us to the 4th step to forgiveness?
The 4th step is trust. And it is putting the things in place, the accountability, the structure, the commitment, the rigor, that there is going to be a change in behavior. And this is often a piece that gets missed too, because you can do all these other steps. You can choose, you can be honest, you can take the responsibility, and we do see a lot of couples make great progress in that. However, if there isn't this last piece where the offended feels like confident that there is adequate structure and commitment and integrity to the partner's word, that they're going to put the things in place needed to actually have this behavior change, then they're not really going to be able to forgive and to let that go. Why? Because especially if it's happened before, then it is this feeling of, well, no one wants to be a masochist. And that's a strong phrase, but what I mean by that is no one is going to be vulnerable enough to say, yes, I'm going to put my trust back out there in you when I'm opening myself up to just get hurt again. Like, no one's going to do that except for Jesus, like, going back to him again, because he doesn't take things personally. He doesn't take offense. It's just a very key step. And I think that is one of the hardest pieces about forgiveness too. Can I be vulnerable enough to put my trust back out there? And I'm not sure a lot of us can unless this last piece is really there. I see and feel from you, partner, that maybe you truly are remorseful. You really do want to change. You want to transform this pattern. You understand the pattern. That's why I mentioned in the beginning, it was really important to get clear on the details and the why. It comes back to this, because when one partner, the offended, knows the offender is clear on what drove the action, it's then that they can take hold of changing it. And that's a lot of times what that partner needs to know. You know what drove it, and I could see you are committed to changing it.
And not just for a day, not just for a week, but consistently.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah,
and look, no one's expecting you to be perfect. Well, there are certain actions that just cannot happen again, right? You can't say, oh, that was a slip up and things like that. But in terms of maybe like it's about yelling, for example. Okay, are you going to be flawless for the rest of your life? Maybe not. I mean, we have an agreement to no yelling, so that's one that we don't do with each other. But let's say I broke it. If I acknowledge it and I do this work, right, and I'm willing to admit my fault and that I broke an agreement, that's one thing, right? If we're talking about a breach of trust, like, talking to other people, that's not something you can just be like, oh, I slipped up. Sorry about that. And so the action, the follow through, the reliability, can they count on you? Do you have steps in place? Like whatever it is, maybe there are certain resources that you need to dive into to learn about what drove that action and the fact that you're following through. So I love that honesty. Do you want to do a quick recap on just the 4 words?
For sure. And again, it's based on the severity of the offense, but the 4 steps to forgiveness and be able to actually move forward into the future would be to choose or commit. Second one, honesty. Third one, the responsibility. And 4th, trust.
Yes, so not an easy process, but so important to do. Remember that without forgiveness, you're really just drinking your own poison and killing
expecting
them.
Someone else to die.
Yeah, exactly. That is the quote, right? But also killing them off. You could be sabotaging the connection. You could just be living with a sense of separation, or you could cut the person out altogether. Instead, do this work. Do the forgiveness work. Free yourself. Free them. We really hope that this was valuable for you. Make sure that you sign up for the 5-day couples challenge as well. That is going to be a great way to start the year, a positive step that you can take. It's going to be very digestible and actionable, even for the busiest of couples. So go to mycoupleschallenge.com. We can't wait to see you all in there. Please let us know if this episode was helpful. We wish nothing but peace, happiness, forgiveness for all of you. Have a great day.